Okay, so you want to do a deep dive on the aftermath of Hurricane Milton, huh? And wow, you weren't kidding when you said deep dive.
Yeah.
You sent over a ton of articles, reports, even some firsthand accounts. It's incredible.
It's impressive. It really shows how much you want to understand the storm's impact. I mean, like beyond the numbers and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. We saw the headlines,
Yeah.
right? Category 3 ripped through Florida, but you only get like a surface level understanding from that.
Right.
I want to like uncover the stories, the human experiences that are kind of hidden within those headlines.
Right.
Where should we even begin with all this material?
Well, you included some really powerful firsthand accounts. One that stuck with me was this family from Clearwater. They had to escape their apartment because the floodwaters were rising.
Oh, man, that one was tough to read. Just imagining having to wade through chest-high water in the dark with your kid on your back. I can't even imagine the panic.
It's terrifying, and that kind of sheer terror is sadly a part of a lot of hurricane stories. But then there are these stories that show how strong of a connection people have to their possessions, like Thomas Kirshen and his sailboat, the Sienna.
Oh, yeah, right. Saying goodbye to his boat, thinking it wouldn't survive such a powerful image, and then to find out that Sienna actually made it through the storm practically unscathed. Talk about a roller coaster of emotions.
Definitely.
And it really makes you think about, that bond between people and the things they really value.
Mm-hmm.
What other stories stood out to you?
Well, you also sent over some articles about the residents of Shore Acres. They've been hit so hard by previous hurricanes, and now this another round of flooding and more damage. It's heartbreaking.
It really is. It makes you think about that cumulative toll these repeated disasters have on a community just when they rebuild, recover. Another one hits. It's got to be devastating for their livelihoods, their hope.
Yeah, it's a really important point and something we should come back to when we talk about the long-term effects of Hurricane Milton. But before we move on, there was one story that offered a little bit of hope in the middle of all this devastation. Tim Blake in Orlando, he just grabbed his chainsaw and started clearing debris for his neighbors.
Oh, yeah, that one was amazing. Talk about resilience right there.
Yeah.
Just stepping up to help others like that. It's a good reminder that even when things are really rough, people can still come together.
For sure. It's a testament to how strong people can be, and it gives you hope that no matter how bad things get, people will find a way to rebuild.
Speaking of rebuilding, it's easy to only think about the wind and the huge waves when we think about hurricanes. But Milton also caused a surprising number of tornadoes, and we were just talking about the coast here. These were happening far inland, which seems kind of strange.
Yeah.
Can you explain how that even happens?
Yeah, so it's something that people don't always realize. Hurricanes are basically these massive spinning weather systems, right? And
Wow.
all that energy can create tornadoes, especially as the outer rain bands hit land.
So even though the center of the hurricane might be miles away from the coast, those tornadoes can still be really dangerous inland.
Exactly. And with Milton, those tornadoes were especially strong, causing a lot of damage far from the coast. One of the worst hit areas was the Spanish Lakes Country Club Village in Fort Pierce.
Sadly, there were confirmed fatalities from the tornadoes there.
Oh, man, that's awful. It just goes to show that even when a hurricane weakens over land, it doesn't mean the danger is gone. What other hidden dangers do people face, even after the storm has passed?
Oh, there are a lot of dangers lurking around, even when you think the worst is over.
Like what? What kind of things?
Well, for one thing, all those down power lines, they can be deadly, especially in the dark. And then there's the floodwater itself. It's usually full of sewage chemicals, debris, all kinds of nasty stuff.
Ugh, just the thought of it.
Yeah, it's not pretty. And to make matters worse with roads blocked, it's not always easy for emergency services to reach people quickly.
Yeah, those blocked roads must really slow things down. Exactly, all that damage. It creates huge challenges for rescue efforts, which sadly can mean a higher death toll even days after the storm has passed.
It's heartbreaking.
It really is.
Reading through everything you sent, it seems like getting an accurate count of fatalities takes time.
Oh, definitely.
It's not always immediately clear, is it?
It's a process. Authorities have to really assess the situation, and those numbers can change as they get more information.
Right.
Often, the full impact doesn't become clear until well after the storm.
That's a good point. It's a reminder that a storm like Milton has these long-lasting effects we don't always see right away.
Exactly. Right now, millions of people are still without power, homes are damaged, and communities are left trying to cope with this massive cleanup.
Overwhelming to think about.
It is. But even in the middle of all the destruction, you see this amazing resilience. Crews are working nonstop to get those essential services back up and running. Linemen are coming from other states to help. It's pretty incredible.
It's amazing how people step up to help each other during times like this. But beyond all the physical rebuilding, what about the emotional toll? This has to be hard, especially for people who were still recovering from Hurricane Helene just a few weeks ago.
That's such an important point. Back-to-back hurricanes like this can be really tough on people's mental health. We're talking anxiety, depression, PTSD even.
Wow.
Yeah. Imagine going through all that stress, preparing for the storm, enduring it, then dealing with the aftermath and rebuilding, and then just when you think you're getting back on your feet, another one hits.
It's hard enough to imagine going through it once, let alone twice.
Exactly. It takes a real toll on people and communities.
Definitely. And it makes you think about the bigger picture here. Like, what role does climate change play in all of this? We've been seeing more hurricanes lately, and they seem to be getting stronger. And the conversations about the impact of climate change are getting louder, too.
Rightfully so. Take the World Weather Attribution analysis of Hurricane Helene's rainfall, for instance.
Okay, what's that?
So it's this group of scientists, and they analyze these extreme weather events to figure out what role climate change plays in them.
Interesting.
Yeah, and in the case of Helene, they actually found that climate change made the rainfall much worse.
Wow.
They're actually doing a similar assessment right now for Hurricane Milton.
So what you're saying is we could be looking at a future with even more hurricanes that are even more intense because of climate change.
It's a real possibility, and it really highlights how important it is that we address climate change seriously. It's not just about dealing with individual storms anymore. It's about mitigating the factors that are making them worse to begin with.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
It seems like we're at this critical point where we need to figure out how to adapt to a world with more frequent and more intense extreme weather.
We need to start thinking differently about how we prepare, how we create infrastructure that can withstand these powerful storms. And ultimately, we have to think about what we owe to future generations who will inherit the consequences of our actions today.
Those are some really big questions.
Hey,
But after going through all of this information you sent over,
yeah.
I do feel like there's a path forward.
Yeah, it's like we have to connect those dots, right? It's not just about reacting to each storm as it happens. It's about understanding that bigger picture, those larger forces that are shaping our world.
Absolutely. And these deep dives are all about getting to that deeper understanding, looking beyond the surface, asking the tough questions, and using what we learn to make smarter decisions in the future.
You mentioned the impact on mental health earlier, and it really got me thinking. With these extreme weather events happening more often, don't you think we need to be doing more to support the mental health of the people and communities affected by these disasters?
Oh, absolutely. We spend so much time and resources on the physical rebuilding, which is obviously critical, but we can't forget about those invisible scars, the trauma of living through a hurricane, the fear of the loss, and then having to pick up the pieces and rebuild. And then just when you think you're getting back on your feet, bam, another storm hits. That takes a serious toll. It's just so much to process and to go through. And it makes those stories of resilience that much more amazing. The crews working tirelessly, the communities coming together to support each other.
It's incredible, isn't it? Even in the face of such devastation, people step up. They help their neighbors, strangers share what volunteers come from all over. It reminds you that even in the darkest of times, there's still good in the world.
It really does give you hope. Hope that we can get through these challenges, that we can learn from them and create a better future for ourselves and for future generations.
Exactly. And that's what I hope people take away from this conversation today. We can't afford to sit back and just watch this happen. We need to stay informed, stay engaged, and most importantly, we need to turn our knowledge into action. Whether that's speaking up about climate change, supporting disaster relief efforts, or even just checking in on a neighbor who might be struggling, every little thing counts.
I've got to be honest, when we started this deep dive into Hurricane Milton's aftermath, I was feeling kind of overwhelmed by it all. The destruction, the long road to recovery, it all just seemed so daunting. But after exploring all of these different angles, the personal stories, the scientific analysis, even those glimpses of hope, it's actually kind of empowering. We're not powerless in all of this.
That's the right attitude. Knowledge is power, and the more we understand these events, the better equipped we'll be to face whatever comes next.
This deep dive really highlighted that for me. We've seen that hurricanes like Milton don't just leave behind physical damage. They force us to confront these really difficult questions about how prepared we are, how resilient we are, and what kind of future we're building. So to everyone listening, we want to leave you with this. What will you do with what you've learned today? How will you use it to make a difference, no matter how small, in the face of these growing challenges? We may not be able to predict the future, but we can prepare for it. And we can face it together with courage, compassion, and a commitment to creating a brighter and more resilient world.